All right. Welcome everyone to this. I think it's a wonderful session. It's something that I could have probably wished for and never thought would come true, but it's coming true. So it's perfect for the holiday season where I get to talk to my favorite, somebody who consider obviously an expert in the field that I'm in, but also somebody who is a mentor and a friend of mine, Eloise. And today we're going to talk about what we both love, which is digital transformation in the procurement and supply chain space. And I think there's a lot that we can talk about. I think the conversation is just going to flow, Eloise. But I want to start with how are you doing today? Like, how are you feeling? What's going on with your life?
It's a, I'm really happy to be here with you, and I love talking to you, Shashi. So, thanks for hosting this session. How am I doing today? I'm doing fantastic. I'm in the Bay Area, or Oakland specifically. It's going to be a gorgeous day. The sun's shining. It's perpetual spring here. So, and we're getting towards the end of the year. It's been a wild and crazy year, and after this week, I'm gonna start shutting it down pretty much, pretty quickly after Monday. So, I'm making that final push, and I've got a lot of energy to get the final push, but I'm absolutely utterly exhausted beyond that.
Yeah,
And you?
I'm with you on that. I think for me, this past few, I was this quarter has been crazy, and for me, today is a special day. By the way, today is my baby brother's birthday, so
Ah,
I sort of wish him
happy birthday to him.
happy birthday to my brother. And I am again similar to you, just going to wind down in the next couple of weeks, and just take a deserved holiday. So today, to kind of get us started, I think what would be good for us to kick off with, and I'm like a very why and a what and a how girl. So I wanted to start with the why, and the reason for that is because I think a lot of us talk about technology sort of as a starting point, which it really is not. I think technology can be like an amplifier, a connector, an accelerator, an enabler, but it really comes down to what you're solving for. So I wanted to just ask you, like in your experience with meeting with all of the leaders that you keep on interacting with, or what you see from a broader perspective to what's happening in the world, what do you think is sort of some of the things that are driving sort of the why behind getting to that digital space that we're trying to get to?
Well, I think for sure there's a massive amount of innovation, and there has been for going on 7, 8 years now, which all that innovation is in reaction to, let's just, I don't know if I want to be kinder, like snarky out of the gate, but it was a reaction to the status quo that was not working. And so we've now have all this innovation that is disrupted that. And there was just a lot of dissatisfaction in the market, a lot of frustration, and a lot of money wasted. So that's kind of one thing. Then the other thing is we've had all these disruptions that have, or these macro global issues that have completely turned our semi-secure way of conducting global business, turned it on its head. And then you also just have, whether it's inflation, the pandemic, trade wars, anything, you name it, there's just been all kinds of macro issues. And then I think there's just been a change in focus, and procurement as a profession has matured in a good way. Do we have a ways to go? Yes, we have a long ways to go, but we are not the same people we were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I'm older, and I have watched and I've lived much of this profession's growth, and we are different. We are just fundamentally different than when we started.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the way I see it is like a convergence and an evolution, right? So I like where you said that it's been a lot of reaction. So with COVID hitting us, what I kept seeing in my experience with all the different CPOs that I was working with or the companies that I've been interacting with was sort of a reaction in terms of what are our key inventory items? How do we get to that supply chain resiliency where we know what our alternative sort of suppliers are? what's the impact, how do I create that list that needs to be there and be able to switch. So that traceability, that visibility became a huge thing, and which was sort of reactionary, if you may, right? In terms of, it is something, again, obviously it's not like all companies were in that boat, but many of them were, right? And to your point about the inflation piece of it, I think that is hitting us harder and harder every day. So most of the, again, companies have different focuses, but the ones that are focused on the cost of goods, on the margins, on the profits, on the direct material, that has been a big impact for them to really look at this whole problem in a different way, in really getting that cost down and innovative solutions with their suppliers. But I think, to what you said earlier, it's an evolution of us in terms of procurement as a function where we are no longer the savings generator. We are like the people. I think we're no longer pushing for that seat at the table. We are actually being asked to provide value. I don't know at times if you're able to do that, but, and again, value can be kind of described in different ways. It's about what can we do in terms of diversity and in terms of sustainability, risk. But there's definitely a mindset shift. So we are being asked to do so much more, but actually with less, is what I feel, right? And the speed and the pace and the simplification that is being asked of us, I think it's a huge responsibility, but it gives us a lot of opportunity to really step up and show up as an organization, as procurement functions and supply chain functions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah.
Do you want to kind of step into some of the trends that you're seeing in terms of digital to sort of meet all the stuff that we spoke about?
I would love to.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the key trends in your mind? Maybe like the top three. Why don't you share some, and I'll go ahead some that I have top of mind too.
So, so, so I think, Mel, I'm going to answer this obliquely, and I might make more than three. But one, and anybody that follows me knows that and by the way, if you don't follow me on LinkedIn or YouTube. Um, everybody knows that I am bullish on process orchestration. I think that's the end game. And so there's no doubt 100% that we need to understand that. And I don't mean even process orchestration as it exists today. I mean where it goes next. And if you talk to all the providers, and some of them are here today, uh, the intelligence, forgive me for saying it, the Gen AI components embedded in it is going to really take it where it is today is nowhere where it's going to be in a year. Like that's what I'm really excited for. The next area I think is just completely turned on its head is contracting, and I think CLM systems are dead. Like, quit buying them, quit investing in them, quit putting them in, because it's they're going to look silly well, if we fast forward a year, they're going to look silly. The other thing I'm bullish about is the digital wallet concept, where as a supplier, I own my data. I fill out my risk survey, I fill out my ESG survey, and I'll share it with you. But I am not responding to 400 ESG surveys and risk surveys. I do think I just saw bookmark something in that the I think there is a question about talent and how we deal with that um, separately. But yeah, but in terms of those three trends, those are the three.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I am absolutely, I would say, passionate about what I call orchestration is actually intelligent experiences. So it's really the concept of, I mean, I really think that as procurement, we're in the business of two things. We're either in the business of providing those personalized, intelligent experiences to all the different stakeholders that we have. And when I talk about the stakeholders, it's of course our business stakeholders, but again, that's in service of the ultimate stakeholders, which is basically our customers who buy the products or the patients that we are serving, but also our internal customers. So whether it's procurement, whether it's finance, whether it's legal, IT, and even our suppliers. And I think the again, orchestration is something that I'm sure, Eloise, you're finding has all kinds of varied misinterpretations and understandings as you talk to people. To me, simply defined, I think it is really that interplay between human and digital, really. and it's like human led and tech empowered. And it's that sort of, I would even go one step further and call it a digital journey, because that's what it really is. It's a journey that you're on, and you're really enabling that for the human in the equation, where you're giving them, obviously, to your point, all the AI enabled connected information. Because one of the mistakes that most people make is they look at generative AI and they think it's only about generating texts and images and sounds, etc. But generative AI is also about how do you basically automate code? How do you really bring in that external internal information and get to that answer, which you can provide to the human query that you get, right? And it's really about giving them the agency also of all the potential choices that they have, and to facilitate that decision making, and not necessarily prescribe the path for them, but also have the guardrails of that kind of a rule engine. Because again, it's not, and I think the other thing which always kind of is my pet peeve is like, oh, it should be an Amazon like experience, right? But on an Amazon like experience, you're going and buying something, but here you're trying to direct somebody getting the optimal value of something, right? So there has to be some kind of a gentle, I would say, nudge, or some kind of a guardrail based on rule engines. And it has to be a very intelligent rule engine based on the different categories that you have, the sector you're in. It also has to have intelligence about the person who's asking the question, in terms of their interest, in terms of their context. So how do you personalize it more? In my mind, I think the definition of orchestration varies. By the end of the day, to your point, I think we're just beginning that journey. And ultimately, what businesses want, and I've seen this again and again, is they want procurement to be as simple, intuitive, enhancing, and an informed experience for them. And most of the times, that's not the case. And the other piece is value generation. We can come to it later. But to me, the experience definition really is this. And I think it's something that most people probably also haven't arrived at, but it's something that for sure, with sort of like the federated tech landscape that we're in, like we have multiple technology. How do we get it to talk to each other? How do we have data as a connector? I think it's an answer most people will arrive to at sooner or later. And
Yeah.
any other?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think intelligent experience, and there's a lot of different things, but we're saying the same thing. And the only thing I would add is the intelligence comes in that it's intuiting what the user wants, and it does that by understanding the language that gets input. Chatbots have been around for a while, but they were terrible because they were predefined and they didn't interpret what the user was putting in. So 99% of them failed because they couldn't intuit before what the user was asking to do. I also think is just to go on to what generative AI is really good at is right now we're looking at it to write essays and even do coding, like you said. The power of it for us is going to come, and this is coming soon or imminently, is when you can use generative AI to interpret your data, and not just one little database, but you can start to have it go and pull multiple data sets together. And that's more complicated than just writing an essay or creating an image, but it's coming. And I think that's going to be a real breakthrough for at least business.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I was reading this article from the Harvard Business Review last evening, and they were talking about how most of the interaction will start with a natural language based query, like, "What do you want to do today?" Like, or a question that you pose to the AI, which is in the experience, saying, "Hey, can you tell me, taking your CLM example, what are the contracts that are expiring for me in the next 10 days, in the next month, in the next three things? But also tell me who my top 10 suppliers are with their risk, at par, or their diversity, or their sustainability." So completely agree with you, because again and again in every organization that I have worked at, I think we sit on treasure troves of data which we don't have access to. And yes, we talk about data lakes and data warehouses, but you have your spend data, you have your contract data, you have your transactional data, you have your supplier data, all of which is not necessarily, again, talking to each other for you to get intelligent. right? So I think the biggest win for us, and this is for me a little bit of the value generation piece as well, right? So again, when you want to be invited to the table, what are you bringing to the table, right? So are you as procurement sitting and are you really conversant with everything there is to know about that's existing internally as well as what's happening externally outside, and then be able to come up with opportunities and ideas. But even when we are guiding the business on the path, are we able to give them that information, which is again a concatenation of all the data, but be able to give them the answers or the possibilities that they can choose from? So I agree with you. Data, by the way, is a fun thing to talk about as well.
Well, we like unlike any other, and by the way, I do see the question. We have a question in the chat,
Yeah.
um, which whoever asked it, we'll get to in a second. But as procurement, think about all the corporate functions where you have HR. Well, their data set's limited to the number of employees in the organization and what you can technically collect or regulatory wise collect. Finance is really just numbers, budgets, debits, credits, and so forth. But procurement and supply chain more broadly, we have access to all of these. We have RFPs, we have transactions, we have quality data, we have questionnaire, ESG questionnaires, we have risk questionnaires, we have way more. We have supply market scans. We have way more data than any other function, and we're probably the least the function least using all of that data. So our opportunity is exponential, and so like our job is to get a harness on those on all that data. And the fact that it isn't connected together in some way, shape, or form and usable is actually a huge miss and holds us back.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, do you want to address the CLM question, and we can jump back into experiences? So
Uh,
one question on the chat, which says, "I'm curious. I would be curious to know why you would say CLM tools are dead. Can you please expand?"
so let's think about how the CLM systems evolved. They're built on this ideology that you have a paper contract. Like somewhere along the line, historically, we had a paper contract, we digitized it, and we needed a place to store it. So that's where we got these contract repositories. Well, once you had documents in a system, then what you needed is a way to collect the metadata on that. And I'm old enough to remember where you had to manually enter the metadata, which is just so silly. It was silly at the time. It's just embarrassing to even state it now. But then we moved on to, well, once it's there, I want to be able to do workflows with it or set thresholds or routing. And then what evolved is, well, we want templates. All right, so then we're going to store the template in the document repository. And then, oh, well, that wasn't good enough. We want language and sort of authoring tools, all of that anchored to this digital representation of a paper contract. And CLMs have not changed dramatically since then. And even all of the good ones, and some of them I like, I'm not against them, but let's remember what the paradigm is that is shifted. Like I don't care about a physical piece of paper anymore. Oh, by the way, we added e-signature in there somewhere along the way too. I don't care about e-signature on a physical document or even a Word document. What I care about is each piece of a contract is really data. So I want data, like contract is really just data. And that once I have contract as a data, so a clause should be a set of data, a set of conditions. And then once we have a set of data and a set of conditions, I can program that. And then that contract becomes live, it becomes executable. I don't need to reference that or take that, or even worse, I hate this, take what was in that contract data and push it into a requisition system. Like ultimately all of these constructs are artificial and they break down because once I have contract that's actual data, then I can actually map it and make it executable. To that end, then not only do we have that, but in terms of the authoring, why do I even need to have a template anymore? And all those tools that didn't work, the authoring tools, now I can just use a prompt. I mean, right now it would be a chat GPT prompt, but sort of, that's just the vernacular. In reality, it's like, I need a SLA or an MSA for this kind of thing and that kind of thing and these kind of variables, and boom, it'll spit it out. And so that's the CLM construct is just archaic. And if you look, there's tons and tons of contracting innovation out there. Oh, and by the way, none of these CLM systems had the analytics. When the analytics, to what you were just talking about in the user experience, is the most important thing. I don't care about workflows and thresholds and all that and e-signatures. Give me the analytics.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, I'm super curious about because when you talk about all the stuff where it converts into data, I think of computational law. I have friends who have companies in computational law where you can take all the conditions from the government, the non-government, and match it to the contractual language, and then I think what you're essentially saying is that they then become conditions that are part of your rule engine or some kind of a logic somewhere, as opposed to just lying somewhere in a database, is essentially what you're saying, right? And you're right. I think this use case that I was talking about contract expiration, which is such a basic one, is something, for example, that is not available. I've also seen so many times, like, I mean, it's hilarious because every company I go to suddenly wakes up and wants to do working capital optimization, right? And again comes down to payment term governance, and it's all about, oh, what did we agree to, what did we actually pay, what was the delta between that. So I think there are some of these use cases or some of these opportunities which, again, had we had the access to the data, were we truly using that data like a thread across the workflow, could have really informed us, could have led to better decisions, and could have led to better results. And I think, but I think that's changing, right? And I can tell you that for us, like for at least for me, the aha moment was because I was, I mean, I grew up developing products and sort of platforms on the commodity, logistics, supply chain, finance side. That's what I did before I moved into procurement. And when I got into procurement, it was the world of the SAPs and the Arebas and the that's SAP SRM back then, Ariba and the Coupas. And then you had this bunch of proliferation of applications that came in. But I think the problem that we had as procurement organizations is the same problem that every, I would say, uh, chief digital officer is having, is that you have a portfolio of applications that solve maybe a specific problem. There are a lot of them, they're not even being adopted. There are a lot of them that do not talk to each other. So you actually have a different problem because all of these applications are not living up to what they're supposed to be solving for, primarily because you as an organization did not create an ecosystem or an environment for it. So how do we, and this is why when I saw your spider body or the structure, it really brought home to me that we need to create that structure in every organization to be able to really leverage, again, all the applications that are there, the data that's there, implement an end-to-end process, and the people that need to engage, right? And I think and that's why it's very easy to say, well, that technology did not work, or that did not work, or that adoption was low. But there's a lot of pre-work that kind of goes into it to be able to make that successful, right? And I think and I think maybe it's a point to converge into talent a bit. Maybe we can just talk about digital talent. And I feel that a lot of these ecosystems that need to be created require a certain mindset, a certain skill set, from a digital perspective and a business perspective. What's your take on it? Because I know you write about it and you speak about it, but what's your take on it?
Well, I'm going to absolutely regret my next statement. But I think as we get intelligent experience or process orchestration, call it what you will, as those tools mature, I think we're going to get very rapid. Let's just move forward 1 year and some of the things that we've been talking about. Let's just assume those stay on their development trajectory. I think we're going to get to the point, and this is the part I'm going to regret, where we have all the digital capabilities that we will need or at least can consume for the foreseeable future, which means technological innovation has way outpaced what the people and the people can absorb and the organizations are willing to adopt. And I think that delta is huge. So as and this has been my research for the last 18 months plus will be for going forward, is like, it's not that we need to pump the brakes on innovation, that the market will correct that on its own, but we have to be attentive to how we're adopting and doing this. And one of the words I keep hearing over and over this year is change management. And I think and it's like, well, where did that come from? That's a question I ask myself. And it's I think largely in reaction to all this innovation and the struggle to get this in. And I'm not saying change management is bad or wrong. It's a trend, and it's so then what does that mean? Because it can't be the only solve. And part of the solve is changing the way the organization absorbs this technology and then changing the talent, because at the end of the day, I don't care how many org changes you do and how much change management you put in. Ultimately, the people, the tools, and the technology, it has to be work for the people, both in procurement and the business we support. And it has to be, we have to know what to do with it. Go back to the example of all that data that we have. Like, if we're not, if I give you access to all that data, what do you do with that? And that's like, if we don't solve that issue, then shame on us, because we haven't taken the opportunity that is in front of us.
Yeah, and I think people don't like, I think the companies that have invested in having a digital team, and when I say a digital team in procurement, again, there's always this battle with IT that should it be in IT, should it be in the function. But I truly believe that it's a skill set where it's a bridge between the business, and I say business, I mean procurement, what the business does, what the enterprise does, what the function does, and technology. So you need people obviously who are very much have the knowledge and the expertise in procurement and what the business is all about, but also who are conversant with what data truly is, and data not just for the sake of data, but what do you do with that data, how do you make that data insightful, how do you make that data actionable, and how do you interconnect the data, like what, and how do you make it traceable also, by the way. I think data traceability is another big problem. And then how do you then understand technology in terms of integrations, in terms of process workflows, where you have one thing passing something off to another, or one thing which is like, to your point, a CLM in isolation, but if a CLM is embedded in that workflow and talking to all of its counterparts, then imagine what all can happen with that, right? So
Although by definition, it wouldn't be a CLM.
but then right, so I do think that the talent piece of it is something that, again, there are all kinds of point of views about it, but what I've seen work, Eloise, and you spoke about change management, is a lot of people ask me, how did you make it a reality in this place and that place, how do you make all these things get implemented, to the extent, because we have done like TPRM suites, we have done a CLM, by the way, we have done our whole user experience, we have done specialized sourcing, we have done CFO, the value capture side of it, we have also done risk and sustainability. So there are a lot of pockets of work that we have done, and now we are building that whole user experience. But it all came down to, I guess, the team, so having that cross functional sort of skill set, but also I think design thinking, which I think is key, which I think that when you try to start doing something where it is not done to people, but it is done with people. So whenever you're trying to do any kind of process design, a data sort of mining, or data insight creation, or a technology implementation, but you work closely with whoever is impacted, who's going to use it, but really have look those design teams who are with you, co-designing that with you. And I think the other thing that comes for the technology piece of it is that you then end up sometimes buying the software that's not very open to configuration. And I'm not talking about configuration for the sake of configuration, but you do need some of the software vendors to be open to basically being more bespoke, right? Being able to really work with that company and be able to create something that works for them. And I know there's like a delicate balance there, but I think that really creates that engagement and that value that people are looking for. And then change management happens, right? Because they're embedded in the journey of what you are implementing. At least that's been my experience of it.
Yeah. I think the one, and back to skills and building off what you just said, the key going forward is understanding and ensuring integrations because we live, and I'm not saying it's hard. This is not like coding SAP 20 years ago. It's much lighter weight, and especially with the tools at our fingertips. But we have to be comfortable understanding how data flows between systems and ingest and exhaust different into different systems. I think that's one skill that we probably don't really talk about enough.
Yeah, yeah. It's a key one. All right, let me see if we have any other questions. What kind of people do you need or want to have in your organization that can enable what is to come? I have realized that certain people with certain personalities are apt to move the needle, but not so quickly that people panic but inch along. Wow, that's a good question. Do you want to take
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Let me start. Well, let me work backwards on this one. I the way I look at it is there's a bus going to the future, and everybody gets a bus ticket, and you can get on the bus, but you don't have to get on the bus. But the bus is going to the future, and some people will not get on the bus, and that's okay. Some people will get on the bus and about halfway through get motion sickness and get off the bus. But don't assume that the bus is because there some people don't want to get on the bus that the bus is not going to the future. Whether you want it to or not, that bus is like we have no choice. And this is true in our personal lives too. So this is not a procurement thing. So so inching along, status quo is not going to hold up. Just like the old ways of working just completely snapped in March of 2020. Now, have we gone back to some of the old ways? Some, but not all of them. And that we have evolved since March of 2020, and we will continue to evolve. And then with all this, especially Gen AI in particular, not because it's any particularly great technology, it's just the one that hit the guys and everybody's talking about. So these AI and these pushes to the future are happening. So like there's no more inching. So and anybody that's a parent that has kids in school, the big debate is what does education look like in an era where I have access to every piece of information, at least that is on record. There is some bias as to what's on record or not, but that's a different issue. So 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 I think that gets to we all have to want to be on the bus, and back to personalities. This is not about dragging your feet, and I'm very critical of middle managers because middle managers try to convince us that the bus doesn't need to leave the station, and sometimes they lay down in front of the bus, and sometimes they loosen the lug nuts on the tires. But the reality is, one way or another, that bus is going to the future. I don't know if there's something you'd add to that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've experienced a lot of it. And it's been fun. I think that there's no choice, but I do feel that there are times that you can leapfrog. But I also feel that what has always worked is when you do like I like the concept of accelerators that has come off recently, but the proof of concept or pilots and scaling something. So I've always, in my experience, whether you start with a particular region or you start with a particular subcategory or you start with a group of people, if you take a smaller problem and you kind of get that momentum going, I've seen that if you're somebody who's, and I generally tend to be a very considered as a very status quo disruptor kind of personality. That's my personality. I always think, why not? Like, what can we do? and how can we think progressively, proactively in the future, and then how do we make it a reality. So I have always dealt with people who are like, but why do we need to do it? What's the value? And you always need to read and figure out where there is that sort of I would say chemistry where somebody else also is equally interested or somewhat interested in doing what you want to do, and then you get that ball rolling. And I think when people see the value and impact that comes with that, let's say one use case, let's call it, it kind of speeds it up. But I agree with you. In fact, I was going to ask you a trivia thing which I found very interesting, because I was reading about these chat, like the AI advanced chatbots of the future. So I was going to ask you, do you know what the Iron Man AI assistant was, what Tony Stark had in his lab? Do you know the name?
Oh, it was Jarvis.
Jarvis. And do you know what Jarvis stands for? I found it really
Uh,
cool.
I've heard it before, but I couldn't tell you.
It's funny. It's like just a really very intelligent system.
Oh, there you
Just
go.
a very really very so I think the future is when I spoke about the digital journeys. I mean, whether we like it or not, we're all eventually going to get to a point where we will have the Jarvises where it will be that human AI conversation that happens, and us making decisions and moving forward. All right, we have some more
We
questions. Yeah.
we got an AI question actually.
In order to get ready now, how do people assess where they are in their own journey, given there are so many elements and variables of what their current state digital transformation looks like, and what the AI enablement outcome they want to get to?
So, so first off, let's be clear. 84% of digital transformations fail, and I actually think the number's higher. So most of these digital transformations are just they're ERP consolidations or upgrades in disguise. So they're just like, let's stop pretending that we're really transforming. So that's one point. This next point is that I would say that we have to be responsible for our own journeys. And when we talk about AI enablement or AI learning, we're all going to do it differently. And that's we should have space, we should have resources to do it. But the training that we need, the enablement doesn't doesn't exist. You're not going to learn it from a learning management system. And if you do, then I have beachfront properties to sell you in Arizona because, or a bridge to sell you because you're not going to learn it from these systems. You have to do it. You have to explore it. And I write about the concepts that humans learn. And so I would very much encourage everybody to take their own journey because we all have different interests and we all have different ways of adapting. I don't know what you would add to that.
I would say that I don't think AI is the answer, or what you start with, right? AI is the how of you, how you make things happen. So wherever you are in your journey so far in your organization, whoever asked the question, right? It's like, what are you solving for, right? We come back to what we started off with, right? So, for example, if your organization is saying that I want to get things done faster, right? So there's definitely some things that are delaying the speed of what needs to happen, and maybe there are different processes where the speed is delayed because certain information is not accessible, or certain steps are taking longer. And then to solve that, it could be many different digital enablers. It could be automation. First of all, you have to clean house and clean your processes, clean your data, and then you start saying, okay, what of this requires AI as an enabler? So I really don't feel that AI is the thing you start with. AI could be the solution. And again, on your maturity journey, like we were taught, like for example, there are two things that we are dealing with. And just to also wrap up, when you talk about even value generation as a category team or a business person interacting with the business, if you are solving for this information that you need to provide to the business when you're planning for your next year, you need all that amount of information clubbed together to be able to get to some opportunities or an idea. That's another example of where you can use AI. So it really depends on what you're solving for. And again, you don't have to solve for nirvana, but it figure out what you want to solve for, and then the solution will come to you. So we have 1 minute, Eloise. I the time just flew, but anything that you want to close with today?
No, other than it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I always enjoy our conversations and really exploring where this can go. And to each and everyone out there, thank you for attending and chart your own course, take your own journey because digital is something you do. It's not something that is done to you.
Yeah, I first of all, I absolutely enjoyed it. We can just go talking for hours, but again, don't let it scare you. It's all hyped up. It's really meant to help you. So and you'll be surprised. We have amazing communities. That's what I have found. I found a friend and a mentor in Eloise. There's so many people out there. There's the DPW community. There are so many people on LinkedIn. So reach out to people, and you'll be surprised in terms of how much they want to help you. So I would just leave it that. I think all of us who are in this space right now are it's a very exciting time for us. So let's enjoy it and let's not be scared by it. All right. Have a
Love it.
wonderful day ahead, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.